A 48-year-old black businesswoman, CEO of her own luxury hotel, walked into the property she owned and was promptly told, "We are fully booked, guests only." She didn't argue. One phone call was all it took for everything to shift. She didn't want any special treatment, no greeting party, no velvet ropes. Just a room, a soft bed, and a quiet place to recharge before a board meeting she hadn't originally planned to attend in person. But when Vanessa Claiborne stepped through the revolving glass doors of the Oakmark Grand Hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, things didn't go the way she expected. She walked in with calm authority, no need for fanfare. Her shoes made no noise, her outfit, well-fitted slacks and a simple, dusty blue silk blouse, was elegant but understated. She carried a single duffel over her shoulder. No assistant. No team. She looked like any guest, maybe even someone pretending to be one. Behind the reception counter, a young woman was nibbling a pen, tapping her long nails against a keyboard. She glanced up, gave a practiced smile, the kind you give right before saying no. "Checking in." Vanessa responded with her usual warmth. "Yes." "Under Claiborne, Vanessa." The receptionist tapped a few keys, paused, then frowned. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name." "That's fine," Vanessa replied. "There's always a suite held for me." The receptionist's tone stiffened. "We are at full capacity tonight. You'd need a confirmed reservation to stay here. For registered guests only." Vanessa's smile didn't fade, but something in the room changed. She glanced past the receptionist to a polished plaque mounted on the wall, Oakmark Grand A Claiborne Property. Her name wasn't on a room. It was on the building. "I am a guest," she said softly. "And more than that, I own this hotel." The receptionist blinked, startled, as if Vanessa had said she was royalty. Then she smirked, clearly skeptical. "You own the Oakmark?" Vanessa nodded, calm and sure. The girl reached for the phone. "I'm going to have to call a manager." "Go ahead." Around the lobby, heads turned. A couple in golf shirts glanced over. A man by the fireplace raised an eyebrow. Vanessa felt it, the unspoken judgment, that silent accusation, someone's lying, and we know who. Moments later, a slim man with a crooked tie and a clipboard emerged from a side door. His badge read, Assistant Manager Neil Dorrance. He glanced at Vanessa and adopted a forced cheer. "Good evening. Is there a problem with your reservation?" "She says she owns the hotel," the receptionist said, louder than necessary. Neil hesitated. Vanessa didn't. She looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not claiming anything. I do own it. My name is Vanessa Claiborne, you'll see it on every quarterly report and board document. I'm staying one night. There should be a suite blocked off under ownership." Neil adjusted his glasses. "Right, just one moment." He turned and mumbled something into a walkie-talkie. Vanessa didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shift her weight. But the atmosphere was growing heavy. That's when security appeared. Not hostile, just present. One by the elevators. One near the coffee station. A message without words. Vanessa didn't blink. But she felt it, that slow simmer in her chest. Not just because they didn't know her, but because once again, they assumed she didn't belong. She could have shown her ID. She could have pulled up emails, ownership documents, even photos from the hotel's ribbon-cutting ceremony 6 years ago. But she didn't. She stepped back, took out her phone, and made one call. That's all it took. Because this wasn't just about getting a room, it was about something far bigger. And everyone watching was about to find out the hard way. She didn't pace. Didn't sigh. Didn't glance at the clock or pull out a camera. She stood quietly by a marble column, phone in hand, waiting. The call had lasted just 26 seconds. She didn't explain much. Didn't yell. Just gave her name, location, and said, "I've been refused access to my own hotel. I need this addressed immediately." Then she waited. At the front desk, the receptionist continued typing, like the screen might magically show a different result. Neil reappeared holding a folder, clearly nervous. But when he saw Vanessa still calmly waiting, he switched tactics. "Miss Claiborne," he said, putting weight on the last name, "I believe there's been a mix-up." "We just need to verify," Vanessa calmly interrupted. "Verify all you want. I'm not leaving." Neil glanced at security, who didn't move. Everyone stood frozen, trapped in awkward silence, unsure whether to apologize or double down. She saw the looks. 3 women whispering by the window. A man pretending not to listen as he half opened his laptop. The doorman no longer greeting guests. And then she noticed the receptionist again, head ducked under the desk, scrolling her phone, likely searching her name. Probably expecting nothing. It might have been funny if it wasn't so routine. Because this always happened. People had a fixed image of what power looked like. What leadership sounded like. What an owner wore. And Vanessa. Brown skin. Natural hair in a puff. No luxury handbag. No glittering jewelry. She didn't match their picture. So they doubted her. That's what hurt. Not the rejection, but how normal it had become. She remembered another lobby, Milwaukee, years ago. She was 28, newly promoted VP. Wearing shoes that hurt and a cheap suit that didn't quite fit. Security had shadowed her from the door. She was only saved when the CFO came down to meet her in person. She'd never forgotten that moment. And here she was, 2 decades later, still having to prove herself. In a building she owned. She let out a soft breath. Still no apology. No acknowledgement. Just the clock ticking. And people trying not to stare too long. Then the elevator dinged. 2 men stepped out. One in a grey suit with a clipboard. One in a company-branded fleece. Neither of them looked like front desk staff. They entered with intention, and Vanessa knew exactly who they were. Regional VP Brent Kessler, and District Manager Carlos Reno. But now it was their expressions that revealed a flash of worry. Brent moved quickly, giving Neil a nod without pausing. "Miss Claiborne, we sincerely apologize, I just got the call." Carlos followed, slightly out of breath. "We are resolving this immediately." Neil began to speak, but Brent silenced him with a firm glance. The receptionist froze, her eyes wide as realization set in. She now understood who Vanessa truly was. Her skin went pale, and she slowly stepped back. "Suite 1202 is being prepared," Carlos said, scanning his tablet. "Your driver's been redirected for the morning, and your usual fruit tray and espresso will be waiting." Vanessa gave the faintest smile. "Thank you." But she wasn't finished observing. She wanted to see how the atmosphere shifted, how attitudes adjusted now that they knew her status. She needed to watch how power worked once it stepped into the room. Because disrespect when someone's unknown is one thing, but to know and still dismiss someone, that's far worse. Carlos quietly pulled Neil aside, his tone sharp. Brent was already on a call, speaking in clipped phrases about HR protocol and staff behavior. The tension that had once been pointed at Vanessa was now circling back through the team like a wave of urgency. Vanessa didn't boast. She didn't cross her arms or look triumphant. She simply stepped back to the counter, calm and poised, and placed her phone on the surface. "I'll take the 12th floor suite," she said evenly. "Same setup. Please have someone confirm it's ready." The receptionist opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Vanessa didn't wait. She turned to Brent. "Have I been checked in?" Brent flipped his clipboard. "Yes. Just completed. You'll have 2 key cards and a formal incident report before you reach the elevator." "Good. And the rest?" Brent nodded. "A full staff notice has been sent. Corporate audit is on alert. Everyone will undergo guest interaction retraining, and disciplinary steps start tonight." Vanessa looked over at the receptionist, who was now nervously chewing her cheek. Her nails still tapped the desk, but the rhythm was different. No longer casual, now rattled. "You'll speak to her," Vanessa said simply. Brent cleared his throat. "Yes, privately. HR will be present." Carlos looked like he wanted to add something, but Vanessa lifted one hand. "I'll speak to her as well. Just not now. After I've rested." She took the key cards, gave a single nod, and walked to the elevator. Heads turned. Guests whispered. Some just stared. But no one said a word to her directly. As the elevator doors shut behind her, she caught one last look at Neil, stiff and sweating near the desk. On the 12th floor, the suite had a soft scent of citrus and eucalyptus. The fruit tray sat ready. Espresso pods neatly aligned beside the machine. A handwritten note with her initials lay on the table, clearly done in haste. She walked through the room slowly, not just checking for tidiness but for care, for evidence that someone still valued what she built. Because this wasn't just a hotel, it was her legacy. She remembered being 33, pitching her dream to a Minnesota bank that didn't believe in her. They barely listened, gave her brutal loan terms, and practically dared her to succeed. She did. And now, nearly 20 years later, here she was, still proving herself. Still having to justify her place, in a room she designed. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant, "Everything's moving forward. Let me know if you want to make a public statement." Vanessa paused. She could go public. One tweet, and the story would explode. One interview, and headlines would write themselves. But she wasn't looking for attention. Not tonight. This wasn't about fury. It wasn't about payback. It was about dignity. And how often it's tied to appearance, not truth. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, letting the silence settle. Outside, the city still moved, cars humming down Grand Avenue, a freight train in the distance. But inside, the suite was still. Then came a knock. Room service. A young staffer entered, holding a fresh espresso, an apology note from the kitchen manager, and a complimentary offer for an in-room massage. Vanessa thanked him quietly and closed the door behind him. She returned to her seat, took a slow sip of coffee, and looked out the window at the faint lights of the city skyline. She could feel something shifting, not just in the hotel, but within herself. A change was coming. At exactly 6:30 a.m., Vanessa Claiborne came down the elevator, not as a guest, but as the CEO. Her charcoal suit was crisp, blouse ivory white, heels echoing with authority, and a calm determination in her eyes that stopped anyone from interrupting. The lobby was starting to wake, early departures, coffee orders, staff moving through routines. But everything paused the moment she appeared. Conversations halted. Even the barista froze mid-pour. Brent and Carla stood by the fireplace, holding folders and untouched coffee. They looked like they hadn't slept. Vanessa gave a slight nod and walked directly toward the small executive meeting room past the concierge. Brent followed. Carlos trailed behind. Inside, seated rigidly, were assistant manager Neil, the receptionist, Kayla Mendez, and a corporate HR rep who introduced herself as Marta. Her notepad was already open. Vanessa didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table, arms folded. No one said a word. The silence was thick. Finally, Vanessa asked in a quiet voice, "Would someone like to explain what happened last night, from your point of view?" Kayla immediately dropped her gaze. Neil cleared his throat, but no words came. Vanessa waited. Finally, Kayla muttered, "I just didn't think she was. I mean, I didn't expect, you didn't think someone like me could own this building." Vanessa finished calmly, her voice steady. Kayla gave the slightest nod. "Was I impolite to you?" Vanessa asked. Kayla shook her head. "No, Did I raise my voice?" "No." "Did I threaten anyone?" Kayla's voice was barely audible. "No." Vanessa exhaled slowly, then looked slightly toward Marta. "I'm not here to punish anyone," she said, "but I do expect responsibility." Marta nodded. "Understood." Carla stepped in. "We are ready to issue a formal write-up and remove her from the front desk until she completes recertification. Neil will also be placed under administrative review while we conduct further interviews." Vanessa gave a quiet nod, then finally took a seat. She turned her attention back to Kayla. "How long have you been working here?" 4 months. "And in that time, have you ever thought about who created this hotel? Who built it?" Kayla hesitated. I just figured it was owned by a corporation or some investors." Vanessa let the pause linger. "Do you know how many hotels I've developed across the US?" Kayla shook her head. 17. From Baltimore to Phoenix. Every one of them built with purpose, making luxury welcoming and service personal. I started this brand because I was tired of being overlooked." She leaned in slightly. "So why is it that when I walk into a hotel I founded, the staff under my name can't even see me?" Her tone wasn't angry, it was heavy with honesty and exhaustion. Kayla looked like she wanted to disappear. Neil kept staring ahead, cheeks burning. Carlos jumped in. "We've already drafted a company-wide memo. All Claiborne properties will undergo mandatory inclusivity training. No exceptions, this is a full reset." Vanessa turned to him. "Don't let it become just another checkmark. I'm not interested in staff memorizing lines. I want them to understand what respect looks like when no one's watching." Brent spoke for the first time. "We'll make sure it's meaningful." Vanessa stood, signaling the meeting was over. As she walked back through the lobby, she noticed the staff subtly straighten up. A few nodded nervously, but she didn't respond. Not yet. She wasn't here for a performance. She wanted transformation. But before she left the hotel, there was one more conversation she needed, and it had nothing to do with policies. She waited until the morning rush quieted. Not for drama, but to make sure there were no excuses, no distractions. No ringing phones. No fake smiles for guests. Just the truth. She found Kayla Mendez alone in the staff lounge behind the coffee bar, sitting at a small table with a barely touched muffin. Her phone faced down. She looked like she hadn't slept. Vanessa didn't send someone. She walked in herself. Kayla jolted upright, nearly spilling her drink. "Relax," Vanessa said softly, taking the seat across from her. "I just want to talk." Kayla nodded quickly, eyes low. They sat in silence for a few seconds, the hum of the refrigerator and the quiet buzz of overhead lights filling the space. Then Vanessa asked, "Have you ever worked somewhere that made you feel small?" Kayla blinked, then nodded. "Yeah. Most of the time." "Tell me." Kayla hesitated, then shrugged. "I worked at a diner off I-80. Wore a paper hat. The cooks yelled every shift. Some customers never tipped. Some called me kid even though I was 27. Most days, I felt invisible. Vanessa leaned back. So you do know how it feels to be overlooked? Yes, Kayla said softly. Then help me understand, Vanessa's voice still level, how you looked me in the eyes last night and decided I didn't belong here. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of realization. I don't know, Kayla whispered. I didn't mean to. When you walked in, I thought you were lost or waiting for someone else. You didn't look like. She stopped. Didn't look like what? Kayla hesitated. Like someone who owns hotels. Vanessa didn't flinch. And what does someone like that look like? Kayla had no answer. That's the issue, Vanessa said. People have a picture in their minds, clean cut, probably a man, older, definitely not someone like me. And those images don't just live in your head. They shape your behavior. I'm really sorry, Kayla murmured. I know it's not enough, but I am. Vanessa nodded. It's a beginning. But I'm not here for an apology. I came so you'd see me, not as a CEO, not as a lesson, as a person. Kayla looked surprised. I was you once, Vanessa said. I started as a front desk rep, got mistaken for the janitor more times than I can count. People would call me sweetheart and honey like I wasn't running the place. I had to constantly choose whether to fight or stay silent. And when I finally made it to the boardroom, I promised myself I'd create spaces where people like you could grow. Wait, you really started as a receptionist? Kayla asked, wide-eyed. Vanessa smiled. In St. Paul. My first manager told me I sounded too educated to be answering phones and put me on night audit. That's where it all began. Kayla nearly laughed. That's wild. It shouldn't be, Vanessa said. It should be normal. She stood up. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for awareness. Every guest, young, old, fancy or not, deserves respect. Start there, and you won't have to recover from nights like yesterday again. Kayla stood too. Thank you. Really? For talking to me. Vanessa gave her a single nod, then left. And as she exited the lounge, something felt lighter, because the message had finally reached its mark. By late morning, the hotel's rhythm had returned, at least on the surface. Guests rolled suitcases over shining tiles. Coffee cups clinked. A family asked about the zoo. But behind the scenes, things were shifting. Brent stood by the window, watching cars pull up at the entrance. Carlos typed quietly, finalizing the company memo. Marta from HR went over new training modules with sharp attention. And at the heart of it all, Vanessa flipped through a fresh pile of employee evaluations, files marked for follow-up. She wasn't furious, she was focused. I'm not here to punish, she said softly, reviewing one file. I'm here to stop this from happening again. Carlos looked up. We are updating how we hire for front desk roles, less about resume skills, more about emotional awareness. Pattern checks. Bias assessments. Good, Vanessa said, tapping her pen on the table. Add me to the evaluation rotation starting next quarter. I'll drop in at different locations, unannounced, just like I did here. Brent raised an eyebrow. You mean as a mystery guest? Not a mystery, she replied. Just not introduced. Until I need to be. Carlos gave a small smile. That'll make a lot of folks nervous. Exactly, she said. Let them feel the pressure. This job doesn't come with warning signs. She stood, slipping the documents into a folder. Get the new training launched by next Friday. And include real guest stories, not rehearsed lines. I want raw experiences. Human ones. Brent nodded. You got it. Vanessa stepped into the lobby and paused near the front desk. A different attendant was on shift, greeting her with immediate respect, like someone who recognized her presence meant something. She nodded back. Everything appeared calm on the surface, but she could feel it, tiny shifts in old routines. That's how lasting change begins, not with a press conference or a forced apology, but with steady corrections, done quietly and consistently, until they take root. She headed toward the elevator to grab her things. Her flight wasn't until late afternoon. There was still time. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, the soft carpet met her heels, and a gentle scent of citrus and clean linens hung in the air. Her suite door was open, housekeeping must have just finished. Her suitcase was packed, zipped perfectly. Laptop and charger ready. Everything was in place. Except for one thing. A folded note sat on the nightstand. She opened it. Miss Claiborne, thank you for your grace. I will do better. Kayla. It wasn't elaborate, just plain notepad paper, carefully written, but it meant more than any corporate apology ever could. Vanessa folded it once, tucked it into her purse, and headed out. Downstairs, a car waited at the curb. The same doorman from the previous night opened the door with calm precision. Safe travels, Miss Claiborne, he said warmly. We hope to see you again soon. She smiled. You will. As the car pulled away, she didn't look back, she didn't have to. She'd left something behind, more than just her luggage. She left the weight of being underestimated. The quiet pain of having to prove her worth. And in its place, something better, understanding. Discomfort. Growth, for them, and maybe even for herself. But there was still one last message she wanted to leave. Not for the hotel. Not for the staff. This was for anyone who's ever had to step into a room and prove they belong. The ride to the airport was still. No chatter from the driver, no songs from the radio, just the hush of tires on asphalt and the soft tick of turn signals. Vanessa sat quietly, one hand resting on her purse, the other holding Kayla's note. She didn't read it again. She didn't need to. It was enough to know it existed. She gazed out the window, brick buildings, small gas stations, old bakery signs. This hadn't been her plan for the week. But maybe this place was where she needed to be, not for the board meeting, not for the numbers, but for the conversation. The truth. This kind of situation didn't surprise her anymore. She wasn't mad that it happened. She was tired that it kept happening. Tired of how often people judged worth by appearance. Tired of being sorted into categories before anyone asked her name. Tired of having to explain what should already be obvious. Yes, this belongs to me. Yes, I earned this. Yes, I'm supposed to be here. And still, she wasn't bitter. That's what people often misunderstood. Vanessa didn't carry bitterness. She carried memory. And memory, when used wisely, it becomes a force. As the airport signs came into view, she thought of her younger self, working nights in tight uniforms, nameless shifts, unseen hours. No makeup. No praise. Just purpose. Just a vision, that one day, she'd build something nobody could take away. And she had. But buildings weren't enough. Because even after launching 17 properties and leading teams of executives, people still looked at her and saw someone less. So what do you do when the world refuses to see you? You make sure you see yourself, clearly, proudly, without apology. Then you walk in anyway. You hold your ground. You speak plainly. You don't ask for permission. You act like the door was always yours. Vanessa stepped from the car, took her bag, and gave a nod to the driver. No words left. Inside the terminal, people rushed past her, coffee in one hand, Suitcases in the other. Loudspeaker announcements echoed overhead. She moved quietly, almost invisible again. But inside, something had shifted. Something had healed. She had taken a moment meant to belittle her and turned it into a mirror. A mirror for that hotel. For that staff. For anyone watching. And mirrors. They never lie. They show the truth, whether you're ready for it or not. She hoped Kayla would grow. She hoped Neil would reflect. She hoped Carlos and Brent would keep their promises. But even if they didn't, she would still stand tall. She always had. Because dignity isn't something handed to you. It's something you refuse to let go of. And to everyone out there, anyone who's been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel small, Vanessa had one last message. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to know who you are, then walk like it. Every time. Let them feel uneasy. Let them question. Let them wonder how they missed it. And when they finally see you, make sure they never forget.